And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And as always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Wednesday. So, obviously, this isn't ideal. I'm starting an hour later than I normally do. And there's good reason for that. So, for some reason, they decided to do work on the power lines on my block. So when I was getting ready to do the show about a little over an hour ago, we didn't have any power, and I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to start the show on time, and I didn't know when we were going to get power back, but we were able to get it back about 10-15 minutes ago. So now we're starting an hour later, but that's all right. We're here, obviously, and of course it's after I didn't have the show yesterday, but I'm here now, and I will be with you guys for the next hour, and then of course we have the Patreon, which I will record shortly after this. But obviously there's a lot to talk about today. Before we get into that, as always, for donations and tips for the show, make sure to go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, always helps the show. And for bonus coverage materials that are not covered on this broadcast, make sure to go to patreon.com and search up GSMC Sports Network, and that's where you can find all of our exclusive content. So with that, what we have on tap for today's show is, of course, going through the latest news and headlines around the league. Of course, in the next two segments, then we will recap the games from yesterday, both in the American League and the National League. We'll give their spotlight in their own segments. So I'll do obviously the Rays and Rangers series, Blue Jays and Twins. We'll do that next, and then in the third segment we'll do the Diamondbacks and the Brewers, and the Phillies and the Marlins, and then we will preview the games, the game two games for today. So that's basically what's on tap for today's show. Obviously, again, not ideal. Of course, no show yesterday, and then we had what ended up happening today, which, again, I couldn't believe it. But that's just what happens with this. And, obviously not going to go crazy over it. But, yeah, so let's get right into the first segment, which is talking about the latest news and headlines around the league. So one of the big things that came from yesterday, and we'll talk about it in the next segment, is obviously something really crazy that I didn't really think about, is the Twins snapping their 18-game postseason losing streak. Now, one of the reasons why I didn't have them winning the series against the Blue Jays, and again, it's still possible that can happen, is just whenever the Twins have made it to the playoffs in my lifetime, they have not done anything. They have not been able to move on to the next round. They always get knocked out. And they haven't even won a game. So I'm pretty sure this is like the first. I mean, I have to go back, but this is the first time that I can remember that, especially with them losing, ending the losing streak. This is the first time they've won a postseason game in my lifetime. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that they just were not. They would always go up against the Yankees. The Yankees were their kryptonite. The Yankees beat them in the '09 division series. They beat them in the 2010 division series. They knocked them out in the 2017 wild card. The Twins just could not catch a break. And, this was a big win for them. The crowd was really into it. So good for them. And MLB did come out with an article that talked about, like, what everything was like the last time that they won a postseason game. So these were like, I think 19 facts about them ending their losing streak, which again is just incredible that it lasted that long. So let's go through it right now. So obviously the drought lasted 6,938 days over that span. The Twins have reached the postseason in 2006, 2009, 2010, 2017, 2019, and 2020. And yeah, that was the other thing too. 2019 was also the other year they played the Yankees in the division series. So, yeah, I mean, And 5 of those appearances were as AL Central champions. 2017 was the wild card game against the Yankees, and that was a game I was in attendance for. So, yeah. And then of the 18 postseason losses during the drought, 13 came against the Yankees. And, yeah, so the Yankees are a big reason why the Twins have not won really any postseason games over the last decade plus. So, yeah, so back then, so George Bush was the president of the United States the last time they won a playoff game. Facebook was the world's first major social media platform, and it was called the Facebook. And it says it was limited to Harvard University and other colleges in the northeastern U.S. The iPhone was still 3 years away. Flip phones ruled the earth, and that was my first phone that I got. The Twins were still playing at the Metrodome. Phillies completed their first season at Citizens Bank Park. The Astros would still be in the National League for another 8 years. Rocco Baldelli was a 22-year-old center fielder for the Rays. And, if you used to play 2K8 like I did on the Wii, he was on the Rays. I just remember when I would play that game and I would play against the Rays, Rocco Baldelli is one of the first names that comes to mind. The game with Jose Reyes on the cover. That's really the only 2K that I still own. Is that 2K8 game with Jose Reyes on the cover. Joe Mara was a 21-year-old rookie. Royce Lewis, who we'll talk about in the next segment, he was 5 years old. It's a very different world. And, so notable names that were in the lineup for the 2004 ALDS. Torrey Hunter, Justin Morneau, 2 guys that come to mind. The Yankees had Jeter, A-Rod, Gary Sheffield, Bernie Williams, Hideki Matsui, Jorge Posada, Ruben Sierra. I mean, it was a different world back then. Really was. And I started watching baseball, in 2007. So, it's been a long time, but that's just something that, I thought was interesting is just, the last time that the Twins, won a game in the postseason. It was when so many different guys were playing. I mean, it's crazy to think about that. But so that's one of the headlines there is the Twins getting their first postseason victory in a long time, snapping their losing streak. Some other things to talk about. So I don't know if I did mention this the last time I was on, but I know the Yankees they're bringing back Aaron Boone as their manager. No surprise there, of course. I knew that was going to happen. It didn't really seem like when you see a lot of the headlines that, Steinbrenner, Cashman, Boone, they're all going to have meetings at the end of the year. You figure that, they're all going to be part of those all of them being part of those conversations means they're all coming back. And, I expected that. We got to see how it all goes with the Yankees. But, the Mets got some work to do. Obviously, David Stearns is now the president of baseball operations there. So, and Billy Epler is still the general manager. So we'll see what happens with that. Buck Showalter, and I mentioned this on the Patreon episode, he's not coming back as the Mets manager. So we'll see. Craig Counsell's been a name that's been floating around. So we'll see. I guess it really all depends on what happens with the Brewers in the playoffs. But there's news there on that front. And just some other things. So Manny Machado, he underwent elbow surgery. Curious to see what the Padres are going to do in the offseason. I think they will run it back, but we'll have to wait and see on that. A disappointing season for them as well. The top 3 teams in baseball when it comes to payroll. All had disappointing seasons, and ended up missing the playoffs. So they got a lot of work to do as well. So so Manny the other thing too is, and I'm looking on CBS with this, so he's going to be out 4 to 6 months after the surgery. So but yeah, hopefully he's able to come back, and we'll see what the Padres can do in the off season, and we'll see how they rebound next year. If this year was just a fluke, they did finish the season on a strong note, so we'll just have to wait and see on that. But yeah, so according to reports, Ohtani is just disappointed by the Angels' failures The general manager said that, and yeah, I mean, as absolutely you should be. I mean, they went for it at the trade deadline. They didn't trade Ohtani. They had a winning record, and it all fell apart. Mike Trout missed the rest of the year, played one game, and yeah, so Ohtani probably not coming back to the Angels, but we'll see what happens. Mariners executive Jerry DiPoto X fans for patience, and yeah, that was a disappointing end to their season. Barely missing the playoffs. This was a playoff team last year, and they made some noise in it, and obviously they ran into the Astros, and they could have won that series, but that was definitely a disappointing finish to their season. And they're going to be one of those teams that's going to be trying to get Ohtani. And I think that would be a good spot for him because that team is pretty good. You got Julio Rodriguez there, Luis Castillo at the top of the rotation. You get Ohtani in there, add another bat to the lineup. And, and if Ohtani comes back and pitches the following year, I mean, that would be a great move for the Mariners. It really would. Because that's a team that's trying to break through. And this was a step back for them after making the playoffs last year and coming back against the Brewers. Against the Blue Jays. Sorry, I don't know why I said Brewers. Josh Donaldson played for both teams. But coming back against the Blue Jays and then obviously running into the Astros. They had game one in the bag, but Robbie Ray gave up that home run to Yordan Alvarez. And then they lost that 18-inning marathon against them in Game 3. So, yeah, it just, disappointing end for their season. But, they should be a team that's, playoff contender going into next year. And we'll see what they do in the offseason. So, also on CBS, they have the list of the, the 25 best free agents entering these in. So that'll definitely be something that I could touch upon later in the week. And also come back to it during the off season. We'll go over the free agents and what their possible destinations could be. So, but again, today was just crazy with the power being out. I mean, of course that ends up happening. But listen, you just got to deal with it, and It happens. It happens though. But I hope everybody's again doing well. But yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to the latest news and headlines. Obviously, the Twins was like the major thing because of ending that playoff win drought that's been going on forever, pretty much my whole lifetime. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously, and I want to give the other games some love as well, and we'll get into them, over the course of, the next few segments. And then we'll obviously preview the games for today. Got all 4 games again today. And we'll see what teams can wrap them up and if we have to see a Game 3 tomorrow. So it's possible. I mean, I think we'll definitely see at least 1 or 2 go into tomorrow for Game 3. I think some of them are going to be wrapped up by tonight. But again, baseball is unpredictable. So you could see all of them get wrapped up tonight, or you could see none of them, and we have all Game 3s. But then that means more games to talk about. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to the first segment of the show. So when we get back from our first break, we are going to recap the games. Obviously, we'll go more into detail with the games from yesterday. Obviously the Twins and the Blue Jays. And we'll also get into the Rangers and the Rays and how the Rays played a very sloppy game and not looking good right now for them. So that'll be when we come back from our first break. So stick around, and we will be right back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.